With the playoffs right around the corner, what better time than now to get hot? Hi, and welcome to CBSSports.com's fantasy football series, Who's Hot, Who's Not, here in Week 12. Well, obviously at 10-0 and 9-1 respectively, the Patriots and the Cowboys are as hot as they can be. But we talk enough about them from week to week, so let's give some other guys a chance here on the show. And of course, here on the CBSSports.com fantasy football series, it's not if you win or lose the game, it's how many points you put up. In the last 2 weeks in losing efforts, Jason Campbell has put up some serious fantasy numbers. He threw for over 340 yards Sunday versus the Cowboys a week after lighting up the Eagles' secondary for 3 touchdowns. 5 of his 12 touchdowns in 2007 have come over the last 2 games, 4 of which have gone to wide receivers who hadn't found the end zone through the first 8 games this season. Chester Taylor began the year as the Minnesota Vikings starting tailback, but was quickly replaced by Adrian Peterson. Of course, in Week 11, Taylor was the one replacing Peterson, who injured his knee in Week 10 in Green Bay. Taylor proved more than adequate in the backfield as the Vikings line is showing that it doesn't really matter who you put back there, they're going to put up big numbers. Just your ordinary 164-yard, 3 TD performance by Chester Taylor up against the Oakland defense. It's good to have a 1,000-yard rusher as your backup, to say the least, and it just goes to show you, fantasy owners, how you need to back up your stud fantasy players with their backups. And just in case you don't believe me in the importance of picking up backups, I welcome in senior fantasy football writer Dave Richards to the program, because he's one of these guys that's here to tell you how important it is to pick up backups like Chester Taylor.
Right. Well, you know, fantasy owners that had Adrian Peterson and backed him up with Chester Taylor are really enjoying the benefits of how things are going right now, whereas I'm in a league with a guy who has Larry Johnson and Adrian Peterson, didn't back up either of them. You know who he started last week? Leon Washington and D'Angelo Williams. Nice. Thanks for the win, by the way, Dwayne. You know, bottom line is this. This is the time of the year when we're making our fantasy playoff runs. Ensure your stud players at running back, maybe a little bit of receiver. I chronicled a couple of players in fantasy and reality this week. It's on CBSSports.com now. And Amber, with the way that quarterbacks are on fire this year, there are a lot of quarterbacks that you should back up. I actually dropped Kurt Warner in one of my leagues for Matt Castle because I've got Tom Brady as my starting fantasy quarterback. Now, I'm not planning on starting Matt Castle anytime soon. And if the Patriots lose the game and Brady sits in week 16 or 17, I'm in big trouble. But assuming that they keep rolling on, I've got the guy who's going to be at the controls throwing to Randy Moss and Wes Welker if Tom Brady were to go down.
Right, and especially this season, it's incredibly important with these backups because this is such an injury-filled season.
Exactly,
and all these key players
huge.
are missing, and people aren't performing that we expected to perform. Speaking of Sean Alexander, he's out in Seattle, but there's a couple guys in Seattle, a few guys actually, that have really stepped up to the plate. They're putting up big points on that offense still, Hasselbeck, Hackett, and Morris. Yeah,
and Hasselbeck's numbers there don't even tell half the story. He's thrown at least 2 touchdowns in each of his last 5 games, really playing the best football of his career in Seattle right now. And the reason why is because they haven't had a consistent running game, especially when Sean Alexander was back there. Mike Holmgren says he is going to bring Sean Alexander back once he practices and is 100% healthy. I don't know if they should rush that very much because Maurice Morris has been playing so well. So if you've got Hasselbeck or Hackett, those are must-start guys. Maurice Morris is now of a low-end number 2, especially when he's got a good matchup. He's got one this week at St. Louis. Start all 3 of these guys in all leagues.
Yeah, if I was a Seattle fan, I don't think I'd be too anxious for Sean to come
back. Yeah.
Staying in the NFC West, Frank Gore continues to be a huge disappointment. Here's another big name that's been disappointing us all season. I mean, is it him? Is it this offense? What do we do with this guy?
It's all of the above. You know, Norv Turner ruined 2 offenses this year. San Diego's where he went, and San Francisco's where he left. But here's the deal with Frank Gore. Bad quarterback play. Alex Smith has been a nightmare. Trent Dilfer has been Trent Dilfer. The offensive line in San Francisco is really underwhelmed this year, really thought to be much better. And there's no real passing game there. So what do you do if you're a defense playing against San Francisco? You load up against Frank Gore. Gore is trying hard. He's being physical with his runs, but he's not even getting the ball enough. He had the ball 20 rushes a game and maybe 4 catches a game. I want to say at least in half of his games last year. This year, he's not getting the attempts. He's not getting the receptions. It's showing in his stat line. He right now is the fantasy bust of the 2007 fantasy football season.
Which is saying a lot this season in particular.
It's because he's been healthy all year. You know, any player that's been bad and they get hurt, they're kind of off the hook. But
Right.
Gore's been playing just about every game. He's only missed one game this year.
Well, he's on a really bad team. So going from one of the worst teams in the league to one of the best in the Indianapolis Colts, Peyton's becoming fairly mediocre without his key favorite targets out there.
Yeah, he's missing Marvin Harrison a lot more than we really thought he would. And it's because Harrison's this guy that has to be covered, opens up the field for Reggie Wayne, and really opened up the field for Dallas Clark and Joseph Adai. Without him, everybody's numbers have kind of come back down to earth. And now there's the question, do I bench Peyton Manning? I remember this question a little bit a couple of years ago when Manning got off to a slow start. And the answer is, you probably don't. You got to keep him in there. If you've got Tony Romo or Brett Favre or Ben Roethlisberger, guys you might have drafted as a backup for Peyton Manning this year, then yeah, you definitely. What have you been thinking? You should have been starting those guys all along. But Peyton Manning, right now, he's had a couple of tough matchups now. He's got a decent one this week. I think you should still keep it going with Manning. We've got him ranked, I think, 5th on our quarterback rank list.
Yeah, it would be tough to
It's tough to do it, but hey, stats are stats. This game's about stats. And if Peyton's only giving you, we've got it right here. Without Marvin Harrison, he's averaging 242 passing yards a game and 5 touchdowns over those games.
Right.
It's not a lot of stats. I'd rather have a lot of other quarterbacks than Manning.
I agree. All right, so we've talked about a couple guys who aren't so hot. Let's talk Let's rather talk about a guy who's very hot. I'm so excited. I'm
See,
choked
Amber,
up.
Amber, you start
Donald
talking about
Lee, it's just
Amber starts talking about hot guys, and she's tongue-tied. Donald Lee has been a hot guy in fantasy football, one of the best tight ends in the game. 13 catches, 154 yards, 3 touchdowns in his last 3 games. He's kind of taken over as the short area target for Green Bay, where maybe Donald Driver would have gotten some of those yards. Greg Jennings now is the big play guy and the deep threat there. And Donald Driver's the one who's not hot. It's Lee who's hot. He's now a top 10 fantasy tight end. We kind of hoped that this would happen at the beginning of the season. We had Lee as a sleeper. And then when the season started, Lee was kind of left out. He was sharing time with Bubba Franks. Franks is hurt now. Donald Lee's taken over. He's a must start in every league. The problem is that people who have him, they've also got Kellen Winslow, Antonio Gates, Jason Witten. You can't start Donald Lee in that case. You got to go with the bigger names there.
Absolutely. All right, Dave. Well, thanks for all of your analysis. That'll do it for us for now. Keep your mouths right here at CBSSports.com for everything you need to know in the world of sports. And if you missed anything here today, you better stop, refresh, and rewatch. For Dave Richard, I am Amber Wilson. Have a great one.